Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to this special hustings in the Tontine Hotel, courtesy of Inverclyde Christian Initiative, who is hosting it. And the initiative is a Christian group that encompasses all denominations, and they do a number of things. You may have seen street pastors out at 2 o'clock in the morning if you've been clubbing. You may know about healing rooms that operate in the town where people can come for prayer for healing. So we do a number of things, and we felt that we should put an emphasis on this election on some moral issues. So I'll go through some housekeeping rules and then we'll get into things and just say a bit about that and how tonight is planned. So housekeeping is, if the fire alarm sounds, it means there's a fire. And so don't wait around. So there's an exit here and an exit there. In fact, just pave away from me if you will. These two, just go for them, and I think the place to stand is out in Robertson Street. If you have a mobile phone, which you invariably have, could we make sure it's on silent? I'll give you a moment for that, because I've done it. Rushed out of a snooker competition courtesy of Sky. My son had borrowed my phone and left it on. So just make sure they're off, please. Okay. And we're going to do an odd thing to some of you, if you've no difficulty with this, and if you have, shut your ears. We're just going to pray for a moment. To begin with, we are a Christian Initiative, a faith-based group, so we're going to pray for about 30 seconds. I'm going to ask Alistair McAleese, if he's in the room, to pray first. Thanks very much, Alistair.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come here tonight to find out more of the candidates' desire for you and the topics that are on the questions tonight. Lord, we pray that you will give us wisdom. We pray that you'll bring peace to this place. And above all, we pray, Lord Jesus, as we look at these questions on moral issues, Lord, would you give us insight and would you give us wisdom as we would listen and we would learn for your name's sake. Amen.
Okay, we all have a sheet in front of us, and we have narrowed very specifically for this hustings into 5 areas that we might call that affect morality and safety and security and faith. We've done that particularly because a lot of hustings, and you may have been to many of them, deal with much wider issues than that, and they've been, I'm not saying well debated because I don't know, but often debated, things like housing and immigration and the economy. So we want to stick to these topics because they don't often get an airing. And here we have a chance to hear from the candidates about their position, their party's position on them. So we would ask that we do not deviate. We've got a pretty full programme anyway. We don't want to talk over each other. When there's questions from the floor, someone will find you with a mic. Please wait for them. And if you haven't got the mic, please listen to them. Don't heckle them. If there's a lot of heckling, it wrecks the night. It seems no advantage to me. We would like to say to persistent hecklers, our gown square is a beautiful square. Okay? So I'm trying to get this across to you just how we feel about this. We're not going to talk over each other. We're not going to sit here and slang each other. We may have very divergent views. Let's listen to them. Okay, we're all equal in that sense. So, first of all tonight, we're going to introduce you to the candidates if you don't know them, and then each candidate will have 5 minutes, time driven by a stopwatch, and the fire alarm will sound after, no, I don't mean that. After each candidate has introduced themselves and their party, we're going to go into these topics. For each topic, I will introduce the topic, and each candidate will speak on their position about the topic for 1 minute. And then we have about 4 minutes, there's such a lot to do, but about 4 or 5 minutes on this topic, please. And we will rule out of order a question that's not related to the topic. We haven't time, and there's other occasions where you have time for that. So please honour that if you will. And if we have a question, we will bring a mic to you, as I say, and ask into the mic. The mic should be below your chin, not in your face. Okay, so don't worry if you think the mic's in the wrong place, it won't be. Tonight we have this meeting streamed, which is a new term to somebody my age, but anyway, it's out on the internet live through democracytv.scot. And you can go there after tonight and you'll be able to watch it again. We also have it recorded by Inverclyde an internet radio station, and that will be played out, the whole meeting will be played out tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock, if you'd like to listen to it again. Right, I think that's an introduction. I'd like to introduce you to all the candidates. To my far left, George Jabbour from the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party. To his right, Ian McKenzie from the Scottish Labour Party. To his right, John Watson from the Liberal Democratic Party. To my right, Ronnie Cowan from the Scottish National Party. And to his right, Michael Burrows from UKIP. So without more ado, George will ask you to start your 5 minutes. Thank you.
It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you tonight. I am George Jabbour. I am the Scottish Conservative Unionist Party candidate. A few months ago, I celebrated my 3rd anniversary of becoming a British citizen and of swearing allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen. This is how it all happened and how I found myself tonight in front of you at the Tontine Hotel. I was born in Syria, and I spent the first 22 years of my life there. While the majority of the Syrian population are Muslims, my family and I are Christians. As a result, questions about religious, ethnic, and national identity have always occupied my mind. As a British citizen, I believe that we are all better off together. I believe that we have offered the rest of humanity so much over the past 300 years. And I believe that there is so much more that we can offer together. This is why I campaigned very hard for Better Together, and why I'm standing as a candidate here in Scotland. I would like to continue fighting for the Union and tell the SNP, move on. As I was growing up in Damascus under a socialist authoritarian regime, I used to dream about moving to Britain. However, as I am not European, there was no easy way for me to do so. Also, my parents couldn't afford to pay for my studies here. I decided to do something about it. I worked very hard while studying engineering at Damascus University, and I won a scholarship to study for a master's degree at Imperial College London. After Imperial, I worked in banking, and I worked with clients from all corners of the world. This taught me important skills on how to relate and connect to people from all backgrounds. However, I am not a fat cat bankster. When working in banking, I noticed that sometimes banks took advantage of public sector organizations. I decided to do something about it. I started a business and I campaigned about this issue in a number of countries. After a few years of hard work, success ensued. Wrongdoing was uncovered. In Portugal, for example, my work led to uncovering the biggest financial derivative scandal there. Senior officials were fired, parliamentary inquiries were launched, and banks made significant compensations to the public sector. Britain has been my only home for over 10 years. It is the country where I spent the majority of my adult life, and I care very deeply about it. However, a year ago, opinion polls were predicting that Ed Miliband might become Prime Minister. I decided to do something about it. I campaigned very hard for the Conservative Party. I travelled to about 10% of the councils which held local elections last year, from Trafford to Winchester and from Swindon to Peterborough. I also did a lot of phone canvassing for the Conservative Party, to the extent that the Prime Minister had to write me a letter thanking me for my colossal effort. After all of this, I was privileged to be selected as a Conservative candidate in Inverclyde. Inverclyde is one of the places where I can imagine myself living for the rest of my life. There is so much history and natural beauty here. The Firth of the Clyde in Inverclyde is the most breathtaking I've ever seen. Also, there is a fantastic community here. People are warm and welcoming. On the train journey in my first visit to Greenock, someone told me, With Inverclyde, you come as a stranger, but you leave as a friend. Well, I hope that I'll become an adopted son of Inverclyde. Inverclyde has also a proud history of engineering and industry, and James Watt has been my hero since my teenage years. I would like to become the Member of Parliament for Inverclyde, and I decided to do something about it. I knocked on over 1,000 doors. I spoke with thousands of constituents across Inverclyde. I discussed your concerns and issues. I analyzed the challenges, and I came up with a solution. This is why tonight, in front of you, I am pledging to set up the Inverclyde Investment Fund to create more jobs and investments here in Inverclyde. My background in engineering and finance, combined with my business experience inside and outside Britain, means that I am capable of setting up the Inverclyde Investment Fund and of creating more jobs here. So I would like to invite you to join me and the Conservatives in creating more jobs for Inverclyde. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you along here tonight to the 7 MPs Hustings. Austerity is hurting our communities, but it's not working for our communities. We see that, we witness that every single day. We see whilst millionaires get a tax break each of £45,000 a year, millions head off and join the queue. To be able to hear me, Chair. Millions head off and join the queues for the food banks. We want to end food banks. It is morally wrong in this country that there are food banks. That's why Scottish Labour will be putting aside £175 million to tackle the causes of poverty that drive people to food banks. So let me share with you tonight where my politics come from. They don't come from a book. I don't look to any political leader. My politics are formed here in Inverclyde from my grandmother. From my grandmother who told me why she votes Labour and always voted Labour, and why she owes a debt of gratitude to Labour that she could never repay. She tells me of the time she lost her husband during the war, had to bring up 6 children on her own, and she had to make a decision. And the decision was, can she afford to bring in a daughter, or can she afford to put food on the table for her kids? Imagine making that decision. And her thanks to Labour is she made the wrong decision once and she lost a child. But thanks to Labour, she never had to make that decision again because we brought in the NHS. And we put the NHS in place. And we are proud of putting the NHS in place. And with the party, we will save the NHS again across this country by investing in it. From a tax on those who can afford £2 million home pluses, we will bring up £250 million for 1,000 extra nurses into that NHS. And Labour have a history of putting things in place to bring justice, fairness into our economy and into our society. We put in place the NHS, but that wasn't enough. So we put in place the welfare. Because it was wrong, justly, morally wrong, that people were falling on hard times with nothing to pick them up on, nothing to save them. But that wasn't enough still. And the last time Labour were in government, when we were told you couldn't do it, we put in the minimum wage to stop the abhorrent practice of giving people £1.50 an hour to live on. That was abhorrent. We ended that and we put in the minimum wage, and we're justly proud of taking those steps, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And in the next government, we will go forward even more. £8 we will put the minimum wage up to or beyond. We will look to balancing the tax. Balancing the tax, it says those with the broadest shoulders have got to pay more at this time, because those who are further down the employment have been taking most of the pain over the last 5 years. And that's why we're saying 50p in the pound for those 1% top earners. And we're saying drop the tax on those middle to low income earners. So even when they come out of that tax threshold, they'll be introduced to 10p in the pound, making their salary go even further. But that's not enough either, because we know we have a cost of living crisis on our hands up and down this country, and we've got to end that as well. And we've got to look at the major overheads that impact in hard-working families and people. And one of those, of course, is energy prices. Each and every year we've all witnessed the price increase year after year, 10% at a time. When you turn up that thermostat, they turn up the price. That's got to stop. That's why we'll freeze the energy prices for 2 years, so they can go down but not up. And we'll fix that market. That means we will put real regulation in place to take that real overhead off of hard-working families up and down this country. Because we believe, Labour believe, that when hard-working families and people do well, Scotland does well. And that's what we want to bring back. Prosperity for all, not for the few, but for the many.
10 seconds.
So, we have under 3 weeks' time to make your choice. Do you want a fairer society, or do you want much of the same as we're having? Scottish Labour offer you the choice. And the 7th of May, end Tory austerity, vote for Scottish Labour and get back a Labour government. Thank
Can we ask you to move position? Would that help? Okay, could someone swap? There's some seats at the front here. Thanks. Thank you, Ian. Now John Watson from the Scottish Liberal Democratic Party.
Good evening. I'm John Watson, and we've lived in Inverclyde for nearly 27 years, and I've spent that time working in urban regeneration, economic development and charitable management. And standing as a Scottish Liberal Democrat, we as a party exist. And I'm going to talk about this because we're going to be talking tonight about moral questions, values and so on, just to explain the values that I represent and why I joined the Liberal Democrats, because what we stand for as Liberal Democrats is a fair and free and open society in which we seek to balance the fundamental values of liberty, equality and community, and one in which no one shall be enslaved by poverty, ignorance or conformity. And we champion the freedom, dignity and well-being of individuals. And bearing in mind some of the questions tonight, we also acknowledge and respect their right to freedom of conscience and their right to develop their talents to the full. So I think you'll see in that whilst we recognise all of those things, that in a way one of the key phrases in there is the balancing, because there are competing values. Sometimes they're not easy answers to issues which are complex. And in a way tonight's great because we're dealing with questions which aren't the bread and butter, the questions about how the tax rate comes and goes. But the questions that are on tonight are ones that could have been asked 100 years ago in many respects, apart from the online. But actually the issues that concern online, the underlying issues on that, are ones which have been here for very many years. So questions for tonight are more universal, and many of these matters are also devolved to the Scottish Parliament, and many are left to the MSP's conscience, as they are at MPs when they were Westminster matters. So it's important that you do hear from us as individuals as well as what our parties. In some position, on some of the questions we do have party views, others they are left to the individual. But the new Parliament has a big responsibility for new Scottish MSPs, because when Scotland said it wanted to stay within the United Kingdom and then set up the Smith Commission, it has come back with a wide range of powers that will make Scotland one of the strongest devolved parliaments in the world. But Scotland's future can only be secured within the UK by a proper UK constitutional settlement, because the UK parliamentary system at the moment is flawed, to put it mildly. Dysfunctional is probably a better word. We have in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, modern assemblies which are much more geared to representing and reflecting the societies of today, whereas Westminster and the UK is really would be not unfamiliar to the 19th century parliamentarian. And so with another hung parliament looking extremely likely, only the Liberal Democrats, out with the two main parties, are the only party in a position to work, as we have shown over the last 5 years, and before that in the Scottish Parliament with Labour, in the national interest to get a result that works for Scotland and the United Kingdom. But the other role of an MP is also to work locally. And I want to work to end this sense of defeatism, fatalism, that is so damaging and draining. We need to get a strong, unified voice for Inverclyde to get the resources necessary, but we also need to make far better use of what we have to innovate, to celebrate. Young people must have reason to stay and not leave Inverclyde.
Thank you. Thank you, John. And now Ronnie Cowan from the Scottish National Party.
Good evening. My name is Ronnie Cowan. I'm your SNP candidate. I trace my family roots back to the 18th century. It's fair to say we are the most west of Scotland centric family in Scotland. Any further east than Paisley, we got a nosebleed. We were mill workers, journeymen and labourers. Thankfully, so far, no politicians. I was looking for pirates and poets and authors. Not my family. Most recently, we were Paisley buddies, but now we are Greenockians. My only family claim to fame was my late father, who played in goal for Morton and was capped 25 times for Scotland. I was born and raised and educated in Inverclyde. In my early years, I played football in the Regis Schooler at Greenock, and in the Sunday leagues in my 20s. I played rugby into my 40s, until my body screamed no more. Twice I dragged myself over the 26 miles and 385 miles, which is a modern marathon. I've worked in IT for 35 years. For the last 13, I've been self-employed running my own limited company. I've worked throughout the UK and Ireland, but I've always lived in Inverclyde. When Winnie Ewing was elected in 1967, she said, "Stop the world, Scotland wants to get on." All these years later, I sometimes feel the same about Inverclyde. Those of you who heard me speak at the town hall on Wednesday will be aware that I feel we've missed opportunities here to promote Inverclyde, not only on a UK basis, but on a worldwide basis. During the referendum, we had an often used saying that says, "If not you, then who? And if not now, then when?" We need to promote Inverclyde, and we need to do it now. The clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. According to the National Records of Scotland, Inverclyde's population has dropped to 80,000 in 2012, and it's predicted to drop to 65,000 by 2037. That is close to a 20% population reduction. The figures show that young families are leaving, and as a result, the birth rate is falling. The demographic for Inverclyde will be heavily weighted towards an older, retired population. This is unsustainable and unhealthy for many reasons. Employers will not locate here if we don't have a workforce. Older family members fare better when surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and increasingly great-grandchildren. If we allowed Inverclyde to continue to depopulate as it currently is, this area will become a wasteland. In contrast to Scotland's population is stable and even growing. It disturbs me that we have never addressed this problem properly before, and it's not as if we didn't know it existed. If we don't show the confidence and faith in our communities, who will? We must encourage aspirations. We can't let go of hope. Jimmy Reid, in his speech to Glasgow University on his inauguration in 1972, said, "I am convinced that the great mass of our people go through life without even a glimmer of what they could have contributed to their fellow human beings. This is a personal tragedy, it's a social tragedy. The flowering of each individual's personality and talents is a precondition for everyone's development. We need to invest long-term in our youth. In the same way as the SNP government has invested long-term in renewable energy, not just on a 4 to 5 year basis to get re-elected, a long strategy to make real difference. Serious, long-term, sustainable investment. And at the same time, maintain free healthcare for all at the point of need, free education based on ability and desire to learn. Obviously, this needs funding. And I believe that only by being able to raise all our own money and having the power to spend our own money will we, the citizens of Scotland, be in a position to target spending where it is needed most. The only way we can change this is to return as many SNP MPs to Westminster as we can on May the 7th.
Thank you. And now Michael Burrows from UKIP.
I think the microphone's working, yeah. Well, thank you for coming along tonight. It's good to see you here. I'm aware that there will be a contingent of Christians in the audience here to find out about moral issues. I'm aware that there are others who are just looking for answers on the many concerns that people have at this election. I'm here on behalf of the UK Independence Party. I've been local to Inverclyde all my life. I'm Inverclyde in all but voice, if you want to put it that way. And I believe thoroughly in the area, and to be fair, I don't think there's a candidate here who doesn't want to make a positive difference. I think that if I was elected to represent this area, it would be an honour and a privilege, but more than that, it would be a duty. We have a situation in Britain where the health of politics is notoriously poor. Trust is low, and the image of politics is dire. UKIP proposes a twofold position. First, we are fielding a range of candidates who want decent, honesty, and reliability to be at the fore of any public representative. We want our MPs to represent the public in an effective way, not just climb on the gravy train for 5 years and get nothing done. And we propose a range of measures that will bring about more democracy, a better engagement, the kind of which the referendum brought about, we must now sustain. So today we revealed our Citizens' Initiative, where every 2 years petitions would be collected, and if over 2 million signatures have been amassed, then referendums would be held on said issues. It's engagement we're looking for. We're looking for real change. We're looking for people to get involved in bettering this country and bettering their own lives. The right to recall. If one of us gets elected and we break the law or we abuse expenses or whatever it may be, then a petition of 20% of the constituents would be enough to trigger a by-election. We want proper engagement, not a situation where the MP uses this area as a launch pad to get into Parliament on behalf of whatever it may be, Labour, Tory, Liberal, Democrat. We don't want a politics of brand management, we want a politics of effective representation and good governance. Now, we also believe in getting out of the EU. That is the reason our party came into being, and we still believe that it is thoroughly important to Britain's future. The EU has morphed from being a trade deal and a common market, which was beneficial, into a nosy, intrusive superstate that gets in the way of progress. They can intervene in our agriculture, our fishing, our energy, our border controls, our industry, our global trade, and over 2/3 of our laws are initiated in Brussels. we do not have control over Britain's affairs, and therefore we do not have control over Scotland's affairs. We can have debates about devolution if we want, but the kind of power we're going to be passing around is not, it's a very little substance until we have either proper reform in Brussels or an EU exit. Proper reform, the Conservatives say they will get, but have spelt out nothing about how they would deliver it. None of the others even wish to acknowledge the issue. Now, as I said, on a local note, I am a Christian myself. I attend a local church, so in the spirit of tonight, I would say that UKIP's position on Christianity and religion at large is that we believe in religious freedom, we believe in freedom of expression to the fullest extent. We feel that Britain's Christian heritage is one worth keeping a hold of, even if you are not of faith. We feel that the values of equality, of tolerance, and the many other positive things that Christianity can contribute, the kind of things that you see in the community. You know, it's a local church that set up a food bank. It's churches who do charity work, and you know, you've got the street pastors things here. There are positive contributions. So we have, as a party, a very strong commitment to Britain's Judeo-Christian heritage and the subsequent values that come with that. I would just like to say that if I was elected, it would be something I would never really be able to get over, that people would put their trust in me and in their party, in the party I represent. But I'm here for real change, and I'm here for a proper personal commitment to Inverclyde. I hope you enjoy this evening and that it's beneficial for you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael, and thank you to you all. The next stage, we are now going to look at the questions and topics on the sheet that you have, and each candidate will speak for 1 minute on their position as an individual and as their party's position, and what actions they might feel that their party would be able to take in power. Now, to give Michael just his breath back, because he's going to start this, we have 5 topics. We're going to take the same order that you see them on the sheet. So that will get you G'd up. After the 5 minutes of 5 times 1 minute, there will be about 5 minutes, if we can do that, for questions from the floor. As I say, someone will come with a microphone to you. Don't shout out, because then there'll be too many voices and the time is wasted. So, our first topic tonight deals with gambling and the effects of gambling, particularly online gambling. I think I heard a statistic not that long ago that something nearly £80 million went into machines in Inverclyde alone, with only 40,000 adults. It's an enormous sum of money, but that's only one aspect of gambling. It's a growing and damaging problem within the UK. It seems to have a significant effect, perhaps always had on some, but on increasingly a number of lives. So we're asking each candidate what their own position and the party's position is on this, and how they propose to tackle it effectively and quickly. Michael, over to you.
Well, as you just said there, Chris, it is a big problem across Scotland, across the United Kingdom, and I hadn't heard that statistic, but it is shocking, really, the waste of money and the waste of time that people can put into it. I would say that as a party we are based on libertarian values. We believe that there should be personal freedom and economic freedom, so we would not say that people should be bound by law in what they can spend their money on or whatever else. So when it comes to the issue of whether people should be able to gamble and how much freedom there should be, we would say wholeheartedly that people should be left to make that decision for themselves and make a sensible decision. And we trust people to do that. We don't feel it's necessary for all the problems that there are to become too intrusive, to have government get too involved in a problem. We feel that people should be trusted to make their own decisions. But, as we've just heard, there are big problems. We all face temptation. So I think with regard to under 18s, we would certainly say effective safeguards should be in place.
Thank you. Ronnie, your minute starts now.
Gambling is undeniably a problem in Inverclyde. Not only is it dangerous to the individual, it's harmful to families, society and the community and our local economy. You can only spend £1 once, you spend it in the bookies, you're not going to spend it in your local shops. But what we see here is the areas with the highest areas of deprivation are the areas with the highest concentration of bookmakers. Addiction can strike in any income bracket, but we've got a gambling problem of a scale because we have poverty, not because we have bookies. Now, of course, I want to ensure that bookies adhere to robust legislation, but unless poverty is addressed, you can have all the tight regulations of the world, it will be completely ineffective. The Smith Commission recommended the Scottish Parliament have the powers to prevent the proliferation of payday lending and fixed odds betting terminals, and the SNP will support the devolution of these powers, as well as the additional devolution of powers over reducing stakes on the FOBTs.
Thank you very much.
John. Well, the state is involved because it takes £2.3 billion a year from betting. But of course, betting has its upside, and people do. I mean, on Saturday, I suspect quite a number of people in this room took more than a passing interest on a particular horse race. Some of you may well have had a little flurry on it. 210 projects in Inverclyde have received over £15.3 million from the lottery. So there is a relationship between betting and the benefits which also come back to the community. But I mean, would agree that the technology and the fixed odds betting is disproportionate in favour of the betting shop and the betting company. One of the things that we've done is to move the responsibility from where the tax is taken to the place where the bet is placed rather than where the company providing the service is based. And which is why when the Sunday People ran its campaign against fixed odds, we supported that campaign.
10 seconds.
So yes, helping people with addictions because it is primarily an issue of education and support. But yeah, people will be free to bet if that's what they want to do.
Okay. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have to confess that I am not a gambler. I have never been a gambler. I don't play betting machines. I don't do the lottery, and I couldn't tell you the winner of the Grand National on Saturday either. But what I do see in gambling is the addiction problem, and especially with the fixed odd betting terminals, which are being christened the crack cocaine of the gambling world. Labour's position on that is quite clear. And we have said before that we would limit these on the high street, but more than that, we would limit the payouts as well to try and reduce the attraction of these machines. But we want to go further than that by just saying from central government, this is the opportunity for devolution to come right down that line to local government and give councillors the opportunity and the right to say no to these gambling outlets.
George.
So obviously, addiction to gambling is a problem, needless to say. However, there have been many regulations to limit that, and of course the Conservative government has been very tough in making sure that vulnerable people, underage people, are protected from addiction to gambling. But I believe that the best treatment to addiction to gambling is having, if people lead fulfilling lives, when they are contributing positively to society, when they have a fulfilling job. And this is why, as I pledged earlier, the Inverclyde Investment Fund is the best solution to make sure that we all in Inverclyde have more fulfilling jobs. And that naturally will lead to having the worst form of gambling disappearing. And I just need to remind you of the Conservative track record in the past 5 years in creating nearly 2 million jobs. That's 1,000 jobs every single day across all of Britain. 100 of those were made every single day here in Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Okay, now it's your chance. We have a roving reporter or a roving mic. I don't think he's the youngest man in the room, so give him time to reach you. But if you have a question, please indicate by raising a hand. On this issue alone, please. Go ahead. Where's our... There he comes. He'll be 3 stone lighter when we're finished tonight.
Hi, I have a question. My name's Katie. It's regarding gambling and addiction. The UKIP guy said that people should be trusted to make their own decisions. I think that's totally different from addictions. If you have an addiction, you can't trust yourself, never mind whatever, do you know what I mean? So I don't agree with you there. The poverty as well, Ronnie, obviously it is a big thing. As she said, within Inverclyde, I've done a bit of research, there is 9 bookmakers in Greenock alone. That's just in the town centre. So where do we go from here? Do you know what I mean? Inverclyde needs jobs, as you said. Jabbour, Mr. Jabbour, sorry. We need jobs, we need to get out of the poverty trap, but how are we going to do it if we keep bringing in gambling places to go to? What do we do? Where do we go from?
Okay, well thank you for that. The gentleman here? No, not for that one. We're not have time.
Thanks everybody for your contributions. I think almost all the parties have made their position clear, but just a question for Ronnie. You spoke about poverty is what causes gambling. You spoke about the possible devolution of powers for gambling, but I wasn't clear how you would address either of those. So, for example, if the powers were devolved to the Smith Commission, my question is, well, and what? So maybe get a wee bit more clarity on that.
Well, the question isn't whether the powers will be devolved to the Smith Commission. We've been promised those powers. It's now our job to make sure those powers are devolved to the Smith Commission. And that then gives the Scottish Government the chance to address Scottish problems. That can then be passed down, as we said, to local governments. If it's a decision of the Scottish Government, we can do that. It's about bringing power back to people of Scotland so those local people in their communities can address whatever problems they see fit. The more you take that power away, the more devolved it becomes down south, the simply the harder it is to do. It's pretty basic answer. It's pretty basic about people within their communities taking care of their own communities. And in answer to the first question as well, I was asked a direct question about the number of bookies in Greenock. Yeah, I don't like to see it. You walk down the West Black Hall Street and you see bookies and charity shops all the way. If there's only one bookie there and people still got that drive to go and gamble, they'll all just go to that one bookie. It doesn't look good. It's not great for our town centre, and it maybe drives away other people who would want to trade in that area. So I get that drift of it, and I agree with you on that. It doesn't look good for Greenock town centre when people want to come and locate businesses here, and all they see are these gambling shops and charity shops on the high street. We'd rather have a more vibrant shopping arena. But as I say, the bookies and the gambling follows poverty, and that is the issue we have to address.
I'm still not particularly clear, so I think 3 of the candidates are quite liberal in terms of their view of gambling, which is fine. Mr McKenzie set out, I think, 2 particular policies, but I'm still not clear as to what the SNP will do. Talking ideology, I think, is maybe not what we're looking for. What would you do?
One thing the Scottish National Party is we will not bring £30 billion of austerity to Scotland, which Mr McKenzie has backed in the government. So, Jamie, you're doing this as if, what difference does that make? If you're at the sharp end of society and you've got £30 billion of austerity coming your way, it's going to make a difference, yeah?
I'm asking what you will do to tackle gambling, not what you wouldn't do. Do you have a policy that you can...
I've told you what we're going to do. We're going to gamble. The poverty is not the gambling. The problem is the poverty which drives people into the gambling. So we're going to address the issue, which is poverty in our society.
Do you have a policy that you can quote tonight? Do you have a policy? I've not heard a
policy to solve poverty.
A policy towards addressing the gambling problem. Mr McKenzie stated 2, the other 3 parties didn't, and that's great, but what is your policy as a candidate for Inverclyde that will tackle it directly?
Our policies are about addressing poverty, because poverty is what's driving people towards gambling.
Okay, thanks for that. Another question?
Hi there, I've got a question. It was just, maybe just to settle it in my mind, we're talking about the amount of bookmakers we've got in the town and gambling places. Is it not right, though, that the local council, they grant these licences or allow these shops to actually open up? So have we not got the power at the moment to say, nope, we've already got 4 bookies, we don't need another one?
Another question? Here he goes.
I think it's well publicised, the issue about the bookmakers, but the flip side to that is that they bring in rates and they bring in jobs as well. That's just an aside. The main issue I see for the gambling issue, it's getting rammed down my throat every night on TV, whether it be Barbara Windsor and her bingo, or Ray Winston advertising football online on betting. At the bottom of the screen, barely legible, is a wee thing, it's a website for Gamble Aware, but it's just conveniently there because it's legal, they've got to put that on. What is each of the parties going to do to stop this message getting rammed down their throats, particularly the young and the vulnerable?
Your call. Somebody want to pick it up?
Chris, I was asked a direct question earlier. Just going back to the first question, it was a direct question. There is a difference between a personal choice and an addiction, yeah. My point earlier was that if someone, as John said, you know, if you're heading down to the bookies to put some money on, then and you're not, it's not a problem for you. It's not an addiction of sorts, and that's fine. You know, that's just the way a lot of people do things. But yeah, there is a problem with addiction. I'd say that spreading awareness of that and using the education system to allow people to make an informed decision. If people know the risks of something, then it's in their hands as to whether they go and do it or not. To come back to the question just asked there, I mean, there is a balance to be had, because at the end of the day, you can't just turn people away. You can't say just because it's a betting shop, and I think that comes to one of the questions over there, just because it's a betting shop, you can't just block it. But you are right in saying that there isn't enough awareness. The T's and C's along the bottom are often in very small print, and a lot of the time that can affect vulnerable people. I mean, there's a situation now where the internet, for example, someone who's maybe overcome a gambling addiction or is in the process of doing so, maybe walking down the street and not looking at the gambling shop and getting by it is fine, but then you log on to the internet and there's a big flashy advert. So I think very difficult to tackle that. You can't just block advertising, you can't just block shops being set up, and I think education and awareness is probably one of the more effective ways of getting that sorted, getting a message out that there are risks, and in bigger than just the small print you mentioned.
Thanks, Michael. Last question on this topic. Any last question?
My question might actually sort of back up your question, which was about hello.
Where are we?
Hello.
Oh, there you are. There you
We're
are.
over here. I am standing up, horror. I'm just very small. My question, well, it's probably just more a bit of information actually. In Inverclyde last year, we conducted a piece of research with our young people in our secondary schools. It was the largest health and wellbeing survey that's been done in Scotland. 83% of our secondary school young people responded to that survey. And from that survey, we found out that 8%, almost 1 in 10, of our young people are engaged in some form of online gambling. And I really think that probably does follow on from your question about responsibility to protect young people, to protect vulnerable people. And I guess I'm kind of directing that one at George in particular, who said that your government have done things to protect young people. I would suggest that that statistic possibly negates that comment.
Very briefly, George.
We did introduce a number of measures to protect the most vulnerable and to protect underage people from gambling. However, I think that all the regulations in the world would not make as much impact on this issue as if people are leading very fulfilling lives that they are contributing positively to society. And I think you all know what my plan is, and that's to create more jobs. But that's my plan, and I think that's the only way that and the reason why I'm iterating this, because here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 other candidates who have spent most of their lives here in Inverclyde, yet I haven't heard any of them yet, not today, not in the debate last week, none of them had any real plan to change the biggest challenge that we face here in Inverclyde, which is jobs. We have lack of... I think that's a very important point, and we need an answer to this question from all other candidates, because that's a key challenge for Inverclyde.
Did you want the last word on this gambling?
Well, we're talking about its availability. It's advertising. We've managed to restrict tobacco advertising, and we've managed to restrict alcohol advertising. I don't see any reason why we can't extend that to restrict advertising for gambling. But one of the problems we do have is that through the National Lottery, we get these paybacks from them. And it depends how you want to look at those things. Are they simply bribes to allow the state to raise that money in the first place and therefore proliferate gambling?
Very much. We're going to move on. And to give Ronnie just a moment to catch his breath, we'll read through this question, which is another one of safety and security, which is online safety. With widespread accessibility to the internet, online safety is becoming vitally important in terms of providing protection from many concerning opportunities that the internet enables. Pornography, online bullying are two big examples. Gambling we've just talked about. So the question is, what practical steps will you and your party take to improve online safety? I'm sure we all know of suicides that, or read of suicides that have resulted from online bullying, which the parents weren't aware of. So it's a very deep and real question. We all have family. What practical steps will you and your party take to improve online safety, and how quickly, if elected, will you implement them? Ronnie. 1 minute.
Okay. This has come about because of the rapid and uncontrolled expansion of the internet and latterly smart devices such as iPhones and Androids. Access to pornography, the grooming and abuse of young children is not new. The media has recently highlighted cases from the 1960s and 70s, some of which still remain to be prosecuted, and that in itself is actually part of the problem we're now experiencing. We've ignored this problem, or it's been hidden from us in some cases. The technology does exist to make internet access much more difficult, but is that really what we want? We could allow our government more powers to monitor internet use. Is that what we want? Sometimes we seem to be addressing symptoms. Christina McKenzie, SNP MP, has already led a campaign to address revenge pornography, so action is being taken. We need to promote responsible use of the internet and the social media. We need to hammer bullying, misogynists, and prosecute where appropriate. And we're better to start with our elected politicians, some of whom seem to have a very cavalier approach to social media and their responsibilities. Once again, it's not an easy answer. Tonight, we're not going to get any easy answers. It's about right mix of education and legal recourse. How quickly can I do that? To be honest, I could not possibly put a time scale on that.
Thank you, Ronnie. John.
Yes, the internet and online is very dangerous, and we know that government is one of the worst offenders. The Snowden files revealed quite starkly how government is quite cavalier about the way that it will spy on what people are doing, will keep records, and the danger then is that those records, what happens to them and where they finish up. And as a result of the Snowden revelations, over 500 writers wrote to the United Nations asking for a UN international bill of digital rights, because we don't have those. Now, on Saturday, the Liberal Democrats launched a campaign for a digital bill of rights in the United Kingdom, and we will introduce that within 6 months because of the new Parliament, because this is a matter which does impact on all of us in all sorts of different ways. And if you want to have a view, if you have a view about what you think such a bill should contain, then contact and put your point of view to the Liberal Democrats. If you just search it online, and you'll find it. Because the issues...
That's it.
Yeah.
That's done. Well done. Yeah.
The internet is a wonderful place, but it's also a very dangerous place. It's a dangerous place for our young people when they go online and they can log into just about anything and everything. That's why Labour has said that they will make not only responsibility lie with the parents, etc., but also with these internet providers. Those who put up these website pages, etc., will be held responsible. Now, if I can touch on the bullying, online bullying, Labour are committed to making online bullying a serious crime. At the moment in time, it is not that serious. If you're caught at it, it's a wrist slap and back you go. Labour will legislate as soon as we get into power that this is a serious crime and you will face criminal proceedings if you participate in online bullying.
Thank you, mate. George.
So the internet has provided us with lots of benefits. I'm not going to spend my time counting these here because we know about the emails, we know about the search engines, etc. But at the same time, new challenges were present. So for example, currently a 10-year-old boy can't go into a porn shop and buy a porn DVD, but they can do it online. The same with gambling. Actually, you can lose a large amount of money online, but in the betting shop there are some checks in place. Bullying. Some of the very harsh bullying that's done online wouldn't be tolerated at all at any school. So we have to have practical measures to stop this. So we have done a number of things, and hopefully I will be able to say some of these in the follow-up questions. But for example, we have introduced the internet service provider filters that enable us to enable parents to monitor which websites their children can access. I know my time is up, so in the follow-up question I will stay you what we pledged. So stay tuned.
Thank you very much. Michael.
Well, I would say that the internet, as everyone has said, is a wonderful thing, and not least it has revolutionised the way we do democracy. And that has to be preserved. The freedom to browse, the freedom to use the internet is a wonderful thing, and we have to make sure that it is preserved when we have these kind of discussions, because if you give government an inch, it can tend to take a mile. So you have to be careful how far the government intrudes in something, but with the specific issues of online bullying, gambling, pornography, as George just said, you can't. It's a totally different dynamic. If you walk down the high street and you go into a gambling shop and you're under 18, you're not allowed. That's the law, and there's no risk. And the same with the others. And as George said, as everyone has said, bullying in real life is cracked down on. You can see it, be it at school or work or wherever. And online, it is much more difficult to trace. And it can also be much more harmful because you're going into the home. If you're logging onto social media and you find an abusive message or something, it's very damaging. So we back restrictions, particularly on such things, porn, gambling, bullying, for under 18s. We believe that adults should have the freedom to browse and the freedom to access the web in all its entirety, but for under 18s we would say there needs to be more education and there need to be restrictions on what websites can operate and the way in which they operate.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you. So it would be good to to concentrate on the practical steps to improve online security. We've heard some, I think. Questions from the floor? Hands up, please. Anybody affected by this issue particularly? We've got somebody.
Hi. Labour's answers both times to both these issues, gambling and online safety, has been more legislation. We don't need more legislation on this issue. We don't want the government poking its nose into our everyday lives. No one goes on the internet and accidentally stumbles across a pornography site, or a gambling site or anything else. You have to search for these things. I don't want the government telling me what I can and can't search. I don't want the government basically doing very much at all. Government should be small. Small government is cheap. What we need is we do need those parental controls. It should be up to parents to say that you can't go online when you're a child and all you have to do is tick that wee box to say, I am over 18. There's no way that I can see that government can have a role in that at all.
So what would be your solution?
It is. The onus is on society and on parents rather than government.
Thank you. The lady on the left here. Here's our sprinting chap. Giving you a hard time there.
Hi, Research tells us that the people that are often and most likely to fall victim to online predators are in fact the most, or in some way vulnerable, or in some way marginalised. So I'm wondering if the panel can tell us who you identify as the most marginalised and vulnerable in Inverclyde, how you would like to embrace them and reach them, and if you have a vision at all for how we as your constituents might serve you or get involved in that.
And just stay that narrow to the topic, if you will. Any response?
Stunned silence from all. I think it's a wonderful question. It's slightly off top of what we're trying to do here. And I'm going to start sounding like a broken record here, but I actually reiterate what the chap in the audience said there. Any technology in the world is not going to stop this. ISP filters, forget them. The internet that people are using for this stuff is not the internet that you and I use. They don't go into Google and search engines and go looking for this stuff. The people who are using this are using a completely different internet. It's the technology, it's the networks all around the world. They bounce their stuff from server to server globally. So the technology, they're already way ahead of us. The only way to solve this problem is to solve the mindset of people who go looking for it. And that's social inclusion, as you said, in all aspects of society. Trying to identify who's at the fringes of our society and how best to get them is a massive problem. It's a great question. Yeah.
Thanks, Ronnie.
I think your question was probably more directed at the bullying side of things rather than access to pornography, etc. online. And that's why I'm saying that online bullying is a terrible thing. It happens to everyone. It's not contained to just one part of the social spectrum. And it has got to a stage now where it's driving young people, especially, to take their own lives. And we have to step up and do something about this. And we are saying there is a law against stalking. There should equally be the same law against cyberbullying with the same repercussions for the person.
Ronnie, very briefly.
I agree with what Ian was saying there, and I just very, very quickly want to reiterate something that I said in my 1 minute. We need to hammer bullying misogynists and prosecute when appropriate, and where better to start than with our elected politicians, some of whom seem to have a very cavalier approach to social media and the responsibilities. I'm not talking about anybody here this evening.
We're going to have a slang match about politicians. I think the point's made, George. Okay.
No, I'm not referring to anybody in this room here.
We understand.
Sorry, I'm not at the top table. Huh?
It's a practical point, because no one specified.
10 seconds.
The practical point that the Conservative Party is the only party who pledged a practical point, which is to introduce age verification checks. And we're going to have a regulator that bans every single website that doesn't have proper age verification checks.
Thank you, Josh. Michael, very quickly then.
It is, it's not. It's not sticking.
I'm on a very strict time limit. George got 10 seconds. I'm getting less than that. There were 2 points there that were made. One was, can we identify who is being targeted, and the other was, we can't literally prevent it. The problem with trying to identify who's being targeted is, if you look specifically at social media and Ask FM, for example, anyone can be targeted. The internet has sort of removed the dynamic that you would normally get in real life, so anyone can be a victim. It's very difficult to track that down, and I would agree with what the gentleman at the back there said. It is extremely difficult. You can put a filter that says you must be 18, you can just click yes, or you can get around it. It's very difficult, and I think if government had the power to stop it, it would be excellent, but I would be concerned. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Very quickly, John.
Yeah, very, very briefly, that's why we've said in the outline to the Digital Bill of Rights that people the education needs to include sex education, needs to include life and social skills and so on, because it is about education and it is about parental responsibility. The person who spoke is absolutely right. These are problems that existed before the internet, they'll exist after the internet. The internet makes it in many ways more difficult, but we have to take responsibility on ourselves and in our households, and that at the end of the day is at the heart of it. But yes, deprivation is an important linkage to this. I'm not sure it's a cause, what the causal relationship is that was suggested. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, education about how we use these things and also expectations of normal behaviour is very important. And social norming as to what is acceptable, at the end of the day, is what society says is unacceptable, is what will drive change.
Thank you. One last question. This lady at the front here. Thank you. Yes.
No, it was just to say that the young man back there seemed to think it was, you know, if you want to access these sites, you can access them, and it's easy to do, but it's far, far too easy to do. I was horrified a fortnight ago when my sister was on the phone and her granddaughter, who is 11, was caught on a site with pornography on it. Now, there's something wrong in society when we're allowing these sites to be on that children as young as 11 can access them without any difficulty whatsoever. Now, fortunately, I mean, her mother went up to her bedroom and caught her on it, and she was grounded, you know, and was told she was never to go on anything like that again. But I think there's something sad about our society that this is happening nowadays, and people are saying, you know, people should be allowed to, if that's what they want, they shouldn't be allowed to. These sites should not be on the internet, and then we wouldn't have these problems.
Thanks very much. We're going to move on. Question 3 on our sheet is headed up abortion. It deals with one aspect of this rather than the whole question of abortion, which is a big one. It is an issue, abortion, that divides many people morally and religiously. And more recently, the question of gender abortion has been highlighted, which again is causing a lot of concern. And arguably, the policy is not as clear as it might be. What is your party stance on abortion on the basis of gender? And if elected, how will you work towards further law reform to address this? John.
Well, you're right. Abortion is still highly contentious. Will I work towards further reform? Well, the reform that I want to see is the reform of the power to deal with abortion devolved to the Scottish Parliament. The Smith talks, it was agreed by all 5 parties that it would be devolved, and then at the very last minute it was pulled, because for some unknown reason it was thought that the Scottish Parliament wasn't capable of dealing with an issue such as this. So the most important reform is to get it to the place where it should be. As Liberal Democrats, we are passionately in favour of devolved powers to the Scottish and the other parliaments and assemblies. As far as gender abortion is concerned, there was a debate in the House of Commons last year where 181 to 1 was in favour of changes to the gender issue. However, it's not always as clear-cut as that, because the BMA were still saying, well, where a mother's mental health is at risk because of the severe pressure that she comes under, then there is still a case to be made for undertaking that abortion. Now, the counter-argument to that is, well, if there's domestic violence or bullying or whatever, then that should be dealt with as that. The problem, of course, with abortion is you're running on a set timescale.
And so are you, John. Thank you very much.
The difficulties and complexities.
Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Abortion on gender is illegal. It was illegal, it remains illegal, it will always be illegal based upon gender selection. What was voted on last year was a change of wording. And that change of wording set real repercussions throughout the abortion law, because we were changing from saying fetus to unborn child. Now that changes the whole context of abortion. That was what was voted on and what was defeated in the House. In a perfect world, abortions wouldn't happen. But we're not in a perfect world. And there are times, and what again was voted on, that some women will pass on a genetic problem to the female, and therefore the advice is that that fetus should be aborted. That was what was voted on in the House. It's illegal just to abort on sex alone, and it will remain illegal.
Josh.
I was actually going to say exactly the same point. It is illegal to conduct any abortions based on gender. And I think this is also morally despicable. However, I would also like to touch on the point of abortion. And here I have with me the NHS website, which actually said that, abortion must be carried out in hospital or at a specialist licensed clinic, which is fine. But the other point, which is I personally don't think it's respected as much as it should be, 2 doctors must agree that an abortion would cause less damage to a woman's physical or mental health than continuing with the pregnancy. And that is in order to allow abortion within 24 weeks. Now, personally, I never had abortion, obviously, but I can read from some of the reports here that says that some of these abortion forms are being pre-signed before the doctors are meeting with the patients to consider whether abortion should be conducted. There has been several sting operations, and so for example here I have The Guardian in front of me explaining that these forms have been signed before the doctor has met with the patient, and I think that's illegal and that's a crime itself, because it means that actually the correct procedure is not being followed.
Thank you, Josh. Michael?
Well, I'm pleased to say that just having an abortion on the basis of gender is illegal, and I would say that on the issue of, as was raised, that if it looked as if a genetic problem would be passed on or anything like that, it would then, in our view, come down to the individual's choice as to whether they had it or not. We as a party have a position on abortion based on the varied views of our members, which is to have a government commission on the issue, and then actually any change in law of a significant sort would actually be conducted by a referendum, because we feel that within, be it Holyrood or the House of Commons, that it would just not represent society to the fullest extent. We would need, you know, I can stand here and have my view, but if I go to Parliament and vote, it could be against what everyone in this room thinks. You know, this is too divisive an issue just to have the 600 MPs or whatever it may be deciding on it. But yeah, on this specific point, it would be up to the individual as to whether they would pursue the abortion or not.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah. Thank you. And Ronnie?
There's no question that abortion of fetus based on gender is an immoral practice that shouldn't be taking place anywhere in the world. But we must develop a plan of action for healthcare providers to help coerced women, to help them, not to criminalise them. In Nepal, where criminalisation of sex-selective abortion does exist, there is no evidence that it has prevented abortions, but there is evidence that it has harmed women. The voices that need to be amplified, the ones we really need to hear, are the voices of women who face this choice. We need to avoid restriction of women's rights to choose how to deal with their own bodies, and we need to take positive steps to make sure that the choices they make reflect their informed judgment and not the pressure of their families or cultures. And to reiterate what John said earlier, the NHS is devolved to Holyrood. Many ethical sensitive issues remain reserved to Westminster, including the abortion law. Holyrood has provided itself extremely capable in addressing complex ethical matters, and transferring these powers to Scotland would bring decision making in these important areas closer to the Scottish people.
Questions from the floor?
Thanks. First of all, I would like to say this isn't an SNP opinion, but this is my personal opinion as a woman. Abortion is a very important thing, and we've got a panel here of all men. Men do not ever, God is good, but he can't let men give birth, which is probably a blessing.
We'd only do it once.
Exactly. Women should not be condemned in any shape or form for having to make that difficult choice. There's women, I was a police officer for 15 years, I saw women that were raped and then found out they were pregnant, and then they were put in that position by men that caused the rape, and they were then had to make that it is a very difficult position, but nobody, I don't even think God would condemn a woman for making that decision, and it should be left to the individual woman, and not decided by 600 men in Westminster.
Another question? There are some women in Parliament, that's the point, yes. Any more questions on this topic? We've tired you out? No? Well, then we're going to move on. Thank you for the panel for your answers on that. We're going to move on, George. Okay. We have another very difficult question to deal with now, which is the one of euthanasia. There have been attempts to legalise euthanasia in Scotland in recent times. In other countries where this has been legalised, government bills have led to further implications. For example, in Belgium, the assisted suicide for minors has been legalised. Could each candidate outline their stance on assisted suicide? Would they oppose any attempt to change the law to legalise assisted suicide during the course of the next Parliament? Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Another very, very difficult question. Removal of end-of-life care is in place at the moment in time for anyone who is reaching that point in their life where they really can't go on and the pain is too much for them to bear. Doctors can take that decision to remove that care to allow them to pass away. But what is illegal is taking someone's life. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about participating in taking someone's life. And whilst I hope I'm never in that position to have to make that decision or watch a loved one of mine have to ask to have their life taken away, neither am in the position to say I would vote and say we'll make this legal to allow someone or someone's to take someone's life.
Thanks, Ian. George.
So my understanding is that this is a matter that is devolved to the Scottish Parliament. So actually, all of us here standing for the Westminster Parliament, we wouldn't be able to vote on it for Scotland. But obviously, depending on how the settlement between the different nations would turn out to be, then we don't know whether we'll be able to make that decision for the rest of Britain. But it is, of course, a very difficult situation. I mean, it is impossible, it's impossible to imagine what the horror and pain that you are in if you are thinking of taking your life because of the pain and difficulty and illnesses you have. And asking someone to assist you in that very difficult act is also puts a lot of difficulty on the other person. And personally, we all have ups and downs in our lives. I think personally it is a very, very difficult situation, and we all need to be aware of we all need to conduct our lives so that we emit more happiness, charity to everyone else in our lives, so that hopefully we alleviate as much as we can the pain that is being suffered by anyone who is terminally ill.
Thank you. Michael.
My position on euthanasia is as it was on abortion. If I was, I mean, as George says, it is a devolved matter, but the principle still stands. If I was in Parliament, then I would, if there was to be a vote in Parliament, I would abstain, because I don't think that's the correct way to get an issue like this properly solved. I don't think it would be a decision, as you said actually, a Parliament that has a majority of men, and sadly so, could vote through something that those men who don't actually know what they're voting on, or have experienced it, or know the potential problems they could face. So that's to do with abortion. But on euthanasia, yeah, I would say that it should be a matter for the population to decide. MPs can go a long way to representing their constituents, but on this issue, I just think it's too momentous for one legislative body to decide it. I think I would abstain and we would have a referendum. That would be triggered, of course, under our citizens' initiative.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Ronnie.
Got a bundle of laughs, is it, this evening? Yeah. Sadly, most of us will know of people whose lives have become intolerable due to progressive disease or terminal illness. An individual has a right to have quality of life, not merely to function as a biological level. Concerns exist, however, about the potential for the system to be abused, for pressure to be applied, for example, to severely disabled, to take action to end their lives. Also, the argument goes that assisted suicide will become a route which mentally ill and severely depressed could see as a possible path. Obviously, if euthanasia were legalised, then stringent safeguards would need to be in place to ensure that it was only accessed by those it's intended to help and to prevent coercion and societal pressures. However, it's difficult to find a legislative framework where these exceptional circumstances can be accommodated and safeguards made robust. Until such legislation is drafted by the Scottish Government, I need to remain open-minded about this issue.
Thank you very much. Questions on this topic? Sir.
Do you want me to?
No, question. I'm going to have a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Josh. Sorry, sir, 1 moment. Literally 1 minute. Beg your pardon.
Well, the question is, would I want to see the law changed? Yes, of course I do, because the law, as it stands, makes no sense. The law is totally ambiguous, and no one knows where the law stands. So the law has to be changed. Now, the question is, what side do I come down on that change? And my position on this is that palliative care does a wonderful job for many, 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 many people, but it cannot help everybody. In Oregon, where there's been now 18 years of such a scheme in place, about 100 people a year die as a result of using this scheme. That's about 70% of the people who sign on to it. One of the things that has happened as a result of this is that palliative care in Oregon is now one of the best in the United States. And that is because this legislation, this enabling, has encouraged and has promoted palliative care to higher levels. The restrictions on it, I think, to answer George's points, can be legislated, and I think actually the legislation for the Scottish Bill actually does provide safeguards.
Thank you very much. Apologies. Sir, the question.
Very quick question, Chair. The gentleman from UKIP stated in the last two topics that the matter was too large a decision to be taken by Parliament, whether that Parliament be Parliament or the Scottish Parliament. And if that is the case, that Parliament doesn't take the decisions, how do we legislate and how do we move on if Parliament doesn't take the decisions? Do we have a referendum on every thorny issue? Do we have a referendum every week, or do we go into chaos and anarchy? Maybe we could be told. I think it's as this is a discussion in morals, I think that's sort of moral abstention. Maybe we could have some clarification. Thank you.
Michael, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, these two issues, particularly abortion and to a very large extent euthanasia, that's our stance because you can have a very representative House of Commons filled with ethnic minorities and with women and all parts of society, but you still can't get the full representation on such a moral issue, on such a divisive issue. Because at the moment, yeah, I mean, if you look at the abortion question, there are less women in Parliament, so therefore that is reduced. You don't have the same representation. Obviously, we're not saying you'd have referendums every week or every month or on every difficult decision, but these two specific issues, we feel the best way to get a democratically legitimate decision, the best way to get a decision that reflects the whole view of society is a referendum, purely because of the divisive nature, because of, I mean, I could be here with one view and yet the majority in this room could vote for me and then not realise, you know, it's just, it's very difficult to have, and I think you can have 500 religious MPs who happen to vote one way, but the population is actually saying another. I think this issue is too large and it's too wide-ranging for Parliament only.
Any more questions? Gentleman here in the blue, and then the lady in the green.
I've had a look at the proposed legislation for the Scottish situation on euthanasia, and you could actually drive a bus through it. And a lot of the wording of it assumes that people directly involved in these situations are of a sound mind and body and they're making rational decisions. I've got a 93-year-old mother-in-law with severe dementia and Alzheimer's, and I can assure you, and I apologise for anyone here who's in a similar situation, you do not make rational decisions when you're in that situation. God put us on this earth, and it's up to God when we leave this earth. I pray every night that God will take her to a better place than she is at the moment, but that's at times of my mind is not rational. And there are times when I see my mother-in-law, she's fine. There are times when she doesn't know who I am from Adam. So that people should not be legislating for when that decision is made, who should make it. Is it a doctor, is it a nurse, whoever? That should be up to God as to when we leave this earth.
Lady in green here.
I just wanted to correct, I think it's Tom, is it? And to say that the law is actually completely clear at the moment, that people are not allowed to kill other people, and doctors are not allowed to kill their patients. And it's if you start trying to muddy that you might end up with difficulties.
In the front here. From the front, and then the gentleman, I think, in the red towards the back. Thanks.
On this point of euthanasia, when, as Tommy says, Tommy's got his mother-in-law like that, we've all got people that have got, everybody in this room knows somebody that's had cancer. Now, you would not wish that on your worst enemy. When it comes to, hopefully, my time, in many years' time, I hope that there is a jag, that I can say, thank you, God, I've had a good life, but I'm now suffering and I am choosing my life, and I don't think God is forgiving. God will respect my decision, but you would not have a dog or a cat or an animal suffering. You just wouldn't do it, and people do make the decision. I've done it. I've picked up other people's animals, and I've said there is a time when you will not expect, you would not put an animal through that. So why do we expect people to suffer because God is maybe a wee bit slow in taking them up to a better place?
Right, thanks for your view. The gentleman in red towards the back.
It's just probably raised to a gentleman whose mother-in-law's got dementia. If that legislation was brought in to Westminster tomorrow, which way would you be voting on the issue?
I've lost that. Who was that addressed to the gentleman here? You'd vote against it. Thank you. One call here, and then the lady in the scarf here.
Just a question for Ian and for Ronnie. So Ian, like the gentleman over there, I've got a grandfather who's got dementia, he's 95, and is not in a place to make any decision, and I wouldn't ever wish that for him. On the other hand, I have had people that have had cancer, multiple sclerosis and other degenerative conditions. So can I ask you first, Ian, is your view that you would not vote for any change, a personal one or your party view, and are there any circumstances in which you may change your personal view?
Let me first of all say that my party doesn't have a hard and fast view on this, that it would, if the legislation came to Westminster, we would not be whipped on this at all. It would be an individual decision to make, and it would be one of the most difficult decisions, personally, I feel I could ever make. Whilst on the one hand I can see the point that if someone is suffering, that perhaps they feel and their family feel that the best for them would be to end that life. But I equally see the point where we hear from the religious community that that decision doesn't rest with us.
Ronnie, and from your perspective, so you said that the question is how would you vote now? Ultimately, you're standing as a member for Parliament for Westminster, for Inverclyde, but for the UK. So to go in and stand as a member of Parliament and not be able to have an answer on this, I would maybe push you again. You say you remain open-minded, but ultimately if people want to vote and it's a key issue for them, I would like to maybe put it to you again and say, well, if the vote came up, and let's say the SNP were in coalition with another party, you would have to vote, or would you vote yes or no to change the law to support assisted suicide, or would you abstain?
Well, obviously there'd have to be some legislation put there, and you'd have to read the legislation and see if I'm comfortable with it. The Scottish National Party do not have a stance on this. I would be given a free vote to this. It would be a matter of my conscience, and I would decide that based on what the bill is that put in front of me.
The lady here in the scarf, and the last question on this topic.
Hi, I actually worked for a few years in the palliative care area in Australia as a counsellor. So I was talking to people prior to and after they've lost their loved ones. I also got to watch my grandmother pass away over 10 days because she had a numerous amount of strokes. So to me that was terrible. The only opportunity given to her was to be starved to death, basically. So is that how we want the people we love and care for to be looked after, and for her to have any sort of quality of life at the ending of her life? If that was her choice to remove herself from this world, she should be surrounded by her loved ones, not have those people in that room be classed as criminals or murderers because they've chosen to stay there with that person through their last moments of their life. We don't deserve that as human beings, and she doesn't deserve that. No doctor should have that choice. That should be the family's choice, and anyone who wants to be informed should speak to the people who work in these areas.
Thank you very much. We need to move on now to a final question. It's about religious liberty. There have been a number of cases where people have been taken to court for refusing to provide services based on the stance that they have taken due to their Christian faith. Now, you may know a bit about this from a few years back with hoteliers and also more recently with bakers in Northern Ireland. So the question is, what is each candidate's view on this? How would you look to protect religious freedom in this country and allow people to make decisions based on their own religious conscience? Is there a need to change the Equality Act to allow room for individual conscience? And it is the Equality Commission in Northern Ireland that is prosecuting in the baking case, which is funded by the government there, just to let you know that background. So, George.
So, I don't want only to protect religious equality and religious liberty here in the UK. I want to protect religious liberty everywhere in the world. I come from Syria as a Christian minority. I know how important it is to allow people to express their views. When I was brought up in Syria, I went to a Christian school, and I used to attend Sunday schools regularly, which ironically in Syria used to take place on a Friday, not on a Sunday, because it is a weekend there. But I used to go to Sunday schools every Friday. Every night before I go to bed, I can't sleep unless I prayed for a couple of moments, reflect on the day, and pray for the next day. And I think I want to protect religious liberty for everyone, because this is very important. Christian values have shaped Britain throughout history and has shaped the world. And I'm very proud that of tolerance and love and charity and compassion that the Christianity has spread across the centuries.
Thank you. Michael.
Well, so thanks for that, Ronnie. Christian, well, it's just in the middle of something serious, I think. Christianity is at the moment in the Middle East under enormous pressure. We all know of the likes of ISIL and the likes of Islamic extremism that is causing immense problems for Christians, for Yazidis and various other minorities who are currently exposed to that. So just to back up what George has said there, yes, religious freedom should be more than just a national issue. It is a worldwide issue. If we look at the specific case that Chris mentioned in Northern Ireland, a bakery owned by Christians has been taken to court because a homosexual couple asked it to bake a cake for their wedding. Now, they refused on religious grounds, and they refused because they felt that it wouldn't be, they are opposed to gay marriage, so they refused on those grounds. Now, another point that was raised in this, which I found was particularly interesting, was that if they do lose the case, then it would become illegal for a Muslim to refuse. If a Muslim owned a printing, for example, that Muslim could not refuse to print an image of Muhammad. There's a lot that weighs on religious freedom. There's a lot that weighs on these kinds of decisions. And while I respect both points of view in the particular case in Northern Ireland, we have to be very careful where we draw the line. As I said, it can have knock-on effects for other religions. People have beliefs and they should be respected. We as a party feel very strongly that Christianity, that was not so recently the religion of Britain, should be respected and should be, the values of that should be taken and applied to our society today.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much. Ronnie.
I fully support the right of religious freedom in this country. Everyone should be free to practice their religion without fear or favour. What I won't support is that freedom impinging on the rights of those who do not hold the same views. As a nation, we are more diverse than we've ever been before, and that diversity must be respected and protected. Whether it be in the workplace or within our communities, we increasingly interact with people who hold different views from our own. I would endeavour to be inclusive, respectful for all members in my constituency.
John. Well, as has been touched on, this isn't just about Christian cases, this is about all religious cases, and Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights talks about the right to have religion, and but also to hold non-religious beliefs and have those protected, e.g. pacifism or veganism. The case of the British Airways steward, Nadia Ouida, that went to the European Court, and they upheld her right against BA, because BA had wanted her not to wear a crucifix. The Supreme Court, the case of the bed and breakfast, that was the Hall and Preedy versus Bulls. That was brought under the Equality Act. And the reason why the judges held that up is, well, for two reasons. A, because the law, if you run a business, you are bound by the law. One of the reasons why business works is because it has a legal underpinning. You don't pick and choose what taxes you pay. You may be a pacifist, but you still have to pay your 4 pence in the pound of income tax towards defence. To say that you're in business and you're going to pick and choose which laws you choose to follow is not on. Because you run a bed and breakfast, you are running a business to have people come into your house to pay good money to have the privilege of staying there. If you don't want to do that, you don't run your house as a business. That's the Equality Act. Therefore, I don't see any reason to change the Equality Act because of that. If people, for personal reasons, strongly hold those reasons not to have those people into their house, that's their business, and I uphold their right to do that. But they cannot do it as a business.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. The right to peacefully practice the religion of which you've been brought up to respect is a cornerstone of our democracy here in the UK, and we hold that dearly, that freedom. But with that freedom, there must be equally an extension of respect for others, an understanding of each and a person's religion, and I feel that most of the problems arising from the education and understanding of others' religions. We know so very little of how our fellow citizens worship, yet we all worship the same God. So it's about respect, understanding, and tolerance of others.
Thank you. George. Oh, are we done? I'm getting done. We're all getting done.
Never turned down an opportunity before, George.
Any questions from the audience? Young man here.
First, just before I start, I'd like to come back on Ian's point is, I don't worship. We don't all worship the same God. I don't worship at all. But coming back to the main issue, I don't think that refusing to bake someone a cake, for whatever reason, is a religious issue. It's an issue of personal freedom. I don't think religion comes into the question at all. And again, I don't think that it's up to government to decide. I don't think that at any point we should have government saying, you must bake a cake for this person. I think it's just a complete and utter ludicrous situation to be in.
Thank you. Any other views? Okay, I'll just come back to the candidates on this just a little, because we are the initiative, and just say, how would you look to protect religious freedom in this country? In just a sentence, Michael? One sentence.
Could I come back on the point there as well? Once I've done my sentence, could I then come back? Okay. Okay,
one sentence.
We've got a short sentence on that. To uphold, I would say we should have an education system that promotes the values of tolerance and inclusiveness towards religious people, towards ethnic minorities, and every aspect of society. And my bigger sentence is that, yeah, I think private business should be able to make decisions. It should be able to choose which customers, who it trades with, and various other aspects of that. I think religious, as you said, it doesn't have to be a religious view. It can be something else. I think private business should be allowed to make those choices. If you look at the issue of the smoking ban, for example, what we would say is that we would...
We'll let you go off there, okay, because we've moved away. Thank you very much.
Try to give an example of what I mean by private business being allowed to...
I think we got it. Ronnie?
I'm still writing my 1 minute.
No, you're not got a minute, you got a sentence.
Have I? Okay, it's about dialogue, it's about inclusion, it's about not demonising people, it's about trying to get positions where we can make informed decisions.
Thank you, Ronnie.
John? Government isn't wanting to tell you whether to bake a cake or not. It's saying you cannot discriminate people because of who they are, and that's very much a role of government. In terms of safeguarding it, it is to maintain the membership of the Convention on Human Rights, unlike the Tories who wanted to get out of it. A car crash in slow motion, and that was the former Attorney General describing his colleague's suggestion.
Thank you. Ian, just a sentence.
I think if you worship in a peaceful and respectful way, there's no need for any further legislation.
Thank you. And George.
You don't solve this problem by regulations. You solve it by love, charity, compassion, tolerance, and this is how we tackle the difficult questions in our society.
Thank you very much. So we now have a 1 minute, and we're doing pretty well, but a 1 minute summary from each of the candidates about why they want your vote, if that's not too wide, and about the issues we've discussed tonight. And I think we'd said that, Michael, you're going to start that.
Could we maybe have someone else while I fix my mouth?
Yes, indeed. Ronnie, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. What was the question?
We have a 1 minute summing up of why you want people to vote for you and your party, bearing in mind the issues we've discussed tonight.
Okay. You have to understand the issues we've heard here tonight. The SNP do not have a policy in these things. These are individual decisions made by individual MPs. So what you've got to ask yourself, the question is, am I the sort of person who's prepared to listen to what you've got to say, take on board your views, and come to, hopefully, an intelligent conclusion which reflects you, your family, society you live in, the community you want to live in, the country you want to live in further down the road. That's entirely your decision. If you do, my name is Ronnie Cowan, May the 7th, vote SNP.
Right, Michael, with a repair job there or another mic.
I'll try not to break this one. I'd say on a local level, I love this area. I love from the scenery to the people, everything about it. It's just wonderful, and I think everyone here tonight, regardless of your allegiance, you understand what I mean. There is something special about Inverclyde. On a national level, I would say that we do need to get out of the European Union. We've obviously had a discussion focusing on moral issues tonight, but on that I would say we have to get out of Europe and into the world. Let's get away from Brussels, let's get away from the only shrinking trade bloc in the world. Africa is growing, North America is growing, Asia is growing, and let's get out and trade with them as well. I think that Britain would do very well to have a referendum on the issue, and that's what I will campaign on. It's what I'll vote on in Parliament, and that is our flagship policy. On the moral issues, as I've said, we would trust the people with big decisions like abortion and euthanasia, and on online safety and gambling as well, we would look at safeguards for under 18s to make sure that they are not exposed to the kind of horrors that you can find on the internet, while at the same time preserving the freedom that the internet has given us and all that is good for it.
Thank you, Michael. That's great. Thank you very much. John?
Well, thanks very much for the opportunity to talk about these deeper, in a way, issues than the more day-to-day issues that we discussed last week and will in future weeks. As MPs, we are elected to represent the whole of the community, the whole of the constituency. And of course, religion is only one element, and there are differences within religions as well as between religions. So no one can elect all the views of all the constituency, but try to bring together some form of consensus where consensus exists, and try to do what is in the best interests of the constituency. And as I said at the beginning, and I hopefully showed through the answers, the issues, the values that drive me, drive the Liberal Democrats, are being about fair, being about free and open, and about seeking to balance the fundamental values of liberty, equality, and community. And those may sound airy, but I think we've heard in the discussion we've had tonight, those are really profound, they're difficult, they're not easy, they're not soft and fluffy positions to have to take to try and resolve the dilemmas. So I hope that I have been able to demonstrate that as Liberal Democrats, those are important values to us. They drive us on all the day-to-day issues as well. So I hope, come May the 7th, John Watson, Scottish Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, John. Ian.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for each and every one for turning up tonight for another packed hustings. And it's good to see so many people locally taking an interest in this election. We've got a big choice to make on the 7th of May. And the choice is you either have a Conservative government or a Labour government. That's the choice you have to make. There is no other choice in front of you this evening. If you want to go with the same other 5 years of austerity and pain inflicted upon those in society that we know are being asked to take the burden, then your vote will be with the Scottish Conservatives. But if you want to change, if you want to really change and have a fair and compassionate society, if you want to vote for the Scottish Labour Party and the Labour Party across the UK, who brought us such social reforms as the NHS, the welfare, who brought us the minimum wage and are prepared to take that social justice further, then it's got to be a vote for Scottish Labour. Ian McKenzie, May the 7th, get back a Labour government, get back this government.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is the second debate where all 5 candidates have participated. I haven't heard a word about what's their own plans for Inverclyde, the biggest challenge facing Inverclyde. 1, 2, 3, 4. Labour, Lib Dem, SNP and UKIP. Most of them spend their lives, the majority of their lives, here in Inverclyde, and it's shameful that none of them had a single plan for the biggest challenge of Inverclyde. This is why I am stepping there to have the Inverclyde Investment Fund. More jobs, more investment, more technology, more innovation here in Inverclyde, because all of us here, we can do much better than this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much, folks. This has been a really encouraging night, and I want to thank you all for being here, because we have got a chance to look at some things that aren't coming up in the automatic hustings that happen. I hope that it's helped you and me in terms of which candidate is closest to the views that I hold, which party hangs on to things that really matter to me as an individual. So I really want to thank you for being here. I want to thank each and every one of the candidates for making time available to discuss these issues. They are serious, they are deep, and they will affect many of us in the way that we vote on May the 7th. There is another opportunity to go into some other issues of this type at a second hustings, which takes place on the 24th of April at the Greenock West United Reformed Church in George Square, just along the road here. That's the church that David Coleman and Zam Walker are ministers of. So if you'd like, they won't cover immediately these areas, but I know Trident, for example, is one that will come up at that debate. So I'd encourage you to go there. If you haven't heard enough, I would encourage you to go there. The 24th, that's a Thursday, Greenock West United Reformed Church along in George Square. It just remains me again to say thank you to all of you for being part of this. Thank you for the civility in which we've discussed these things. We've been heard, we've been able to speak. I think as Inverclyde Christian Initiative, it's really a bit of a privilege for us to be able to stand in front of you and provide and host such an opportunity. And I think it's helped us as well in determining the way that we see the way forward. So give yourself a big cheer, please, for being here, for contributing, for taking part, and I hope shaping how you'll vote on May the 7th. Thank you very much.